really eye-opening piece that was nuanced and informative without going too deep into the weeds, while still respecting the intellect of the viewer. I thought it was really interesting to see how different forms of exploitation permeate daily life, especially in a North American or Western context, how we contribute or benefit from human slavery, from our cup of coffee to our phones and our clothes that we wear, things that we might not directly have to see, but now we will see them after seeing this piece. It will be hard to ignore. Really interesting to get such deep insight into the research and those trying to capture the insight on what global slavery looks like and how we can potentially combat it.
This was such an eye-opening and important film to just let people know that, these terrible issues of human trafficking and modern day slavery are still going on, and that they're issues that affect all of us, which was a really eye-opening point, that they affect everybody in some way, especially in the goods that we consume every day, even without thinking about it. Most people don't even realize, as they pointed out, and I didn't realize that, there's labor exploitation in so many of the goods that we consume and that are consumed every day all over the world, from things like coffee, technology, clothing. It was also so devastating, obviously, to hear about, the child marriages and how young girls are being put in these, terrible and sexually exploitative, and violent situations for financial gain. Obviously, is really upsetting. As upsetting, obviously, as the content was, I thought the doc itself was just so great and so well done. I loved all the different interviews they were able to get, and I think in a doc like this, they did a great job of, I think it's so important to not only get interviews of, the people who are kind of studying these things from the outside, but also the people, in the communities who are directly affected by these things. And I think they did a great job of getting a really great balance of those interviews.
So the most important themes that came out of this that they tackle was slavery, extortion, um, trafficking, human trafficking, child marriage, poverty, racism, and capitalism, and many more. But those are sort of the core themes that they are tackling. And one thing I admire about this documentary is that because there are so many themes and so many different kind of points of the stories that they're trying to tackle, it's sort of eased with the use of archival footage, specifically imagery, because it allows us to sort of digest all the information that's being put into us, good information, but a lot of information nonetheless. So the placing of imagery and archival footage really helps enhance that, but then also allows us to sort of digest what's been going on. I really enjoy the use of them kind of going around the world essentially to sort of circumvent this sort of the issue that of like sort of modern day slavery that has been going on. And so they kind of went to first world, second world, third world, all these different sort of places, and they sort of introduced these topics and then how they're going to change them. I really do enjoy how kind of the conflict in the documentary, when they're sort of addressing slavery specifically, and they're addressing it between these people from different nations, and they realize that sort of there's like there comes an issue, and there comes a time where you need to sort of explain what actually modern day slavery means and kind of go into detail because it can mean different things to different people. And that issue sort of arose, but it was really great to sort of see them kind of discuss that. I think the establishing shots are very, very, very important. One of the most important things in the documentary, because the placement of this being a global issue is very important, and you get to see sort of how these issues affect the different places in the world and what that visually looks like. So when we see England versus when we go to Maputo versus when we're in Rio, you kind of see the different spannings of these places and the people who inhabit these spaces. I also do enjoy the dual narration from the main subjects. So having them two sort of bounce off each other and lead and guide the documentary throughout was good. And then going through this history of slavery per country, I think was really well done, because it takes the kind of broader topic that we start off with, and then it narrows it down to kind of the core issue of what we've been talking about.
I really loved watching this film. I thought it was very informative and just a really thought-provoking piece. This film uses beautiful cinematography and imagery to deliver its message in a way that's clear and informative and unflinching. I think this film's message is extremely pertinent right now. I think there are a lot of people out there who don't know that modern slavery exists. And I think there are a lot of people out there who don't understand just how recently slavery occurred in history, in places like America. Um, for anybody that needs to be woken up, this is the film that I would show them. Yeah, I think this film did a really great job of taking a serious and complex issue and making and delivering it in a very clear way.
Explaining global exploitation and just generally within both business practices and throughout the world and the impact. And I think it did a great job of using experts interviewed and talking about the project from a really research and academic perspective, but also from a documentary perspective. I thought the visuals that were included really showed the disparity in some parts of the world, and just generally, I think that worked really well for the point that it was trying to illustrate. A really, really great informative documentary.
I, as a middle class American, I had no idea. You know what I'm saying? So I think this documentary, I like it because it was important in exposing a real issue as far as like, especially to people like me who would never know about it otherwise, about like modern slavery and what that looks like and the different forms that it takes around the world and how that is informed by historic slavery and like the connection between the two and like the idea that we can't, how she said at the end was like, we can't we have to grapple with, all of us with the privilege have to grapple with like the effects of the translated slave trade and the history of slavery around the world. And then also be that grappling with has to be informed by the history of slavery. So I really like it. It really was eye opening. So
really poignant and really moving. I thought it was really well researched as well. I think with documentaries, especially, the more information that they can explain and give and teach as you're watching it, the better. Knowledge is power, and I think a lot of the times, especially with the way that the world is structured and the way that society is structured and the way that the news cycle and everything else is structured these days, is that a lot of the times where you are in the world dictates what you learn and what you see and what you have readily, what you have access to learn and see. So having films like this where a lot of the times, because of the way that everything is structured, I think a lot of it is like out of sight, out of mind mentality that, you don't think about this kind of like quick 24-hour, not just news cycle, but fashion is a great example for it. A lot of people don't think about or like to think about how quickly clothes get made and that they're always there. They just want to go to their store and pick something up or, whatever. And I think that movies like this are such a great way to, like I said, knowledge is power in that sense, where the more you can get across, the more you can teach, and the more you can bring it to the forefront, and the more that you can link things together for people and really explain what modern slavery is.